14 minutes past 9. Good morning, Malaysia. Otto here, coming to you live from Makassar, Puri, Kuala Lumpur. Also on our TikTok live at TRAXXfm official. Now, recently I did ask you with regards to today's little topic, which is what's your biggest SST headache right now? So the options were profit melayang, or is it because of price increase, your customers run away, or is it because of the paperwork, or is it because of the unforeseen charges that worries you? And a lot of you actually voted for price increase, customer lari. But do not worry, we have in the studio right now yang berusaha Encik John Patrick Anthony Sami in the studio. He's the Undersecretary of Tax Division or Head Tax Division of the Ministry of Finance, here to explain to us, and also, which is the topic, understanding the new SST landscape, what Malaysians need to know. So thank you very much, Mr. Patrick, for coming to the studio today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us here.
Now, without further ado, let's move on to the first question over here. Now, what prompted the government's decision to actually expand the SST, and what are the key changes in Malaysia's SST system effective 1st July this year?
So, first and foremost, I must take you back to Malaysia's fiscal position. In 2021, fiscal deficits were very high at 6.1%. So over time, when this government took over in 2022, fiscal deficit was 5.5%. Prime Minister made a commitment that we will reduce fiscal deficits to below 3%, and he instituted the Act, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, in 2023. So since then, government has been constantly making an effort to bring deficits down, right? And we bring expenses down and increase revenue, right? So this is part of the effort of balancing. So if you look at the Malaysia Madani concept, economy Madani concept, we are looking at raising the ceiling so we get more investments, more business activities, more jobs in Malaysia. And we're raising the floor. We need to raise revenue levels for the Malaysians. And the third one is good governance. So with this additional revenue, government can improve the services. For example, the sumbangan tunai rahmah has increased. The SARA, the Bantuan Rakyat, from 700,000 people has now increased to 5.4 million people. So these are people who get assistance on daily subsistence and so on. So looking at the overall, we are trying to strengthen fiscal position, make the economy stronger so that we will leave a better future for the future generations. We don't want to leave debt behind for the future generations. Otherwise, our children and children's children will continue paying for it. You know, so one of the measures that we have undertaken at this point is to implement the sales and service tax expansion, right? So, and this particular expansion is really very targeted. So the common man on the street, you and I, our daily living is not going to be affected. But the businesses will have to pay something. The banks will have to pay something, you know. So otherwise, there's plenty of exemptions carved into the measures that we have announced. Mm-hmm. And this is a good time for Malaysia to implement reform measures like this, because recently the MITI minister announced approved investments in Q1 was very high at 89.6 billion, right? The construction sector grew healthily at 15%. Private consumption rose at 5%. EPF contributions rose by 16% year on year. So that means in this first quarter, number of people who have contributed to EPF has increased. The amount they have, so that probably looks at pay rise going into everybody's pocket. Unemployment is down at 3%. Inflation remains stable at 1.4%. So fiscal deficit has been trending downwards. The target for this year is 3.8%. right?
Yep. And just to add on that, Mr. Patrick, is that also just recently our Prime Minister announced that our energy sector will receive about 9 billion ringgit in terms of investment, which also goes to show that Malaysia is the best location when it comes to investment opportunities. As you plainly see to all our listeners that unemployment has dropped, employment has risen, our economy is going up, thus boosting our confidence, investors' confidence in Malaysia. So, with that in mind, which is why the SST has to actually level up a bit, balance a bit in terms of this.
It's true, because while we create the good economic environment, investment environment, we at the same time need to raise revenue for government to continue its functions.
Yep.
The number of school toilets that have been repaired, the number of hospitals and clinics that have been improved. For the longest time, maybe we have not spent enough to provide better facilities for our own people. So this is where we need to raise revenue and channel it back to the rakyat.
Exactly. Now, when you're talking about raising the revenue and the SST, what specific goods and services will we see when in terms of price increase due to the revised sales tax rates of 5 to 10%? And how were these categories actually determined?
So let me just explain. So first you have the sales tax, right? The sales tax is levied on manufactured items and imported items. So let me give you a scenario of a family of 4 living in KL, living in Malaysia, right? Rental, there is no service tax for a home, right? Construction of residential home, again, there's somebody who's buying a house, there's no service tax. Basic food items, from rice to vegetables to meat to noodles to milk, all of this is at zero. So still no impact, right? And then education, you send your school children to 90% of us send to our government schools, no impact, right? Higher education, if you send your children to university, still no impact, SST. Basic food, yes, if you and I purchase our food and we cook it at home, there's no impact because there's a zero SST. But of course, if you choose to consume it in a restaurant, then you have to pay that 6%, right? Banking, basic banking services, current account, savings account, no impact. Insurance, medical insurance, life insurance, no impact, and healthcare, no impact. Government, of course, there's no service tax. Even if you go for private healthcare, as a Malaysian, there's no impact. So really, there is no reason for alarm in the public because as far as Ministry of Finance is concerned, the minister has spent a lot of time with us to do all these carve-outs so that the local common man on the street, you and I, will not be impacted by this.
Now, if you've just tuned in right now, we're talking to Yang Berusaha Encik John Patrick. He's the Undersecretary of Tax Division or Head of Tax Division and Ministry of Finance. We're talking about understanding the new SST landscape, what Malaysians need to know. So if you have any questions or probably you'd like to join the live, we are currently live on TikTok and leave a comment down there. Make sure to share it and also like it. Yeah. So now that we understand, we can determine what goods or specific goods and services are being taxed and also why the decision came about. Let's talk about how does the government plan to mitigate the impact of these tax increases on essential goods and services, and what exemptions are in place?
So, as I said in the list of goods, all basic items are exempted from sales tax. So then let's move on to services. So in services, the first would be the construction industry. In the construction industry, anything to do with residential is exempted. So if there are facilities attached to the residential, it will also be exempted. Even if it's a commercial title, there is residential on top and a shopping center at the bottom, the residential portion is exempted. from service tax, right? So the government made this effort to make sure that our common day-to-day life is not affected in construction. Then we move on to rentals. Service tax is going to be levied on rentals, but only at one level. So we are going to make sure in the mechanism there will no be a tax on tax incidence. So just one level, everybody who's renting will just have to pay at one level. Again, residential is exempted from this. Coming back to construction, the small contractors, 1.5 million and below sales turnover, annual sales turnover, they are also exempted. Small businesses with sales turnover of below 500,000, they're also exempted. They don't have to register and no service tax. So then financial services. In financial services, we are only going for fee-based and commissions by the merchant banks and investment banks. The common man on the street, we don't use these services, right? So if I'm a big company and I get the bank to issue a bond for me, I have to pay the bank, let's say 1 million fee for issuing the bond for me. So from that 1 million, they will pay an 8% to the government. The bank will pay, right? So in healthcare, education, the Malaysians are protected. Education, we are only going for the very high-end schools. We have compiled a list. We have gone through the websites. We have gone through Ministry of Education. There's less than 30 schools that are in the high end, So any Malaysian who chooses to go to those kind of schools,
They'll have to pay.
they don't mind paying because they choose to go to a higher end school.
They expect it. Yeah, all right. They have to
Yes.
expect this.
So they don't mind paying, right? And so the normal private schools, there are plenty of private schools all over Malaysia. Their fees is below 60,000. We went through a very thorough analysis because you don't want the middle class or the common man to get caught. So your Chinese school, your Tafi school, all exempted.
What kind of manpower are you looking at when it comes to doing this kind of research for making this SST new landscape? How long did it take?
How long did it take? Since before budget last year, when these measures were announced in budget in October 2024, even before that, we have started our analysis. Prime Minister originally announced that we will start on the 1st of May, but it's just that our analysis and preparing the Gazette has taken us more time.
Yeah,
So that's why there was a delay.
I see. Now, if you've just tuned in, we're talking to Encik Yang Berusa, Encik John Patrick from the Ministry of Finance. Is the Undersecretary of Tax Division, Head of the Tax Division of the Ministry of Finance. Now, we're going to take a little short break right now, and when we come back, we're going to delve deeper into this conversation when it comes to understanding the new SST landscape, what Malaysians need to know. For now, Benson Boone, Beautiful Things, Radio on Tracks. Good morning, Malaysia. Benson Boone, Beautiful Things, right here on TRAXXfm's morning show with me, Otto. Good morning, Malaysia. Hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday. It's the 18th of June. And in the studio right now, we have Yang Berusaha Encik John Patrick, the Undersecretary of Tax Division, Ministry of Finance. We're talking about understanding the new SST landscape, what Malaysians need to know. And we're also currently live on TikTok, so should you have any questions, it's either you drop us a message over there or either give us a call at 03-2282-5491 or 03-2282-4746. Now, these situations, apparently a lot of people are having misunderstandings about it, and which is why a lot of you actually voted for due to the price increase. Customer pun lari juga. No, it's not the case actually. So which is why we have a special guest in the studio to actually explain to us what is actually happening when it comes to the SST, what you need to know. So thank you very much, Encik Patrick, for coming to the studio. Now, moving on to the next question is, how will the expansion of the services tax affect everyday services like healthcare, education, and also property rent?
Thank you, Otto. As far as healthcare is concerned, the Malaysians are not affected, right? So we can continue to go to private healthcare. There's no service tax on this. And this time, the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, agreed to even extend the service tax exemption to allied health. So allied health will refer to the physiotherapists, the audiologists, the dietitian, the speech therapists, and so on. So these are services that certain categories of people will need to use, and we've expanded that to be exempted, right? So education, the normal schools that you and I go to, the Chinese schools, the toughest schools, all of these schools are exempted because their fees is not above 60,000. So we've gone through the list and we found a very small number of schools that are above 60,000. And again, these are parents who wish to spend on this sort of education.
Yeah.
And it's a privilege for them to contribute to the government, right? So the impact on property rentals, residential rental is not going up. Yes, so commercial rentals, yes, they have to pay the service tax, but here we are making sure that it's only one level, so it will not be a tax on a tax. So let's say you take a big shopping complex. The owner is a shopping complex. Then you have the main tenant, a particular brand, and the main tenant would sublet to smaller tenants. And those smaller tenants is not going to be tax on tax. They will just have to pay at one level for their rental amount.
I see.
Right? And then those whose sales turnover, let's say I have a small cart in a shopping center, my sales turnover is below 500,000 a year, I will be exempted.
So anything above will be charged?
Anything above, then you have to register and
pay the charge it, yes.
Yes.
Now, what measures are being taken to ensure that transparency in how SST revenues are utilized? And how can the public actually track the allocation of these funds?
So every year when we table the budget, we table the budget expenditure. Because as far as government is concerned, all revenue goes into the Federal Consolidated Fund, and it's only members of parliament who will be able to approve the expenditure. So these funds are approved we table it during the budget speech. They will go through the details and they will approve the expenditure. So that's where you can find the expenditure for, let's say, schools or hospitals or education, these are the biggest expenditure components in every annual budget, education and healthcare. So then you can see the increase in those programs, right? So it's public, it's on tabled in Parliament, it's also on the website.
And speaking of the website, I'm looking at it right now. It's MySST, that's MySST.customs.gov.my. So you can get further details on what we are talking about as well when it comes to from industry to legislation to guides and SST highlights as well. And pretty complex as well. So if you have any questions, this is the actually opportune time to ask our guest here in the studio. Is either you drop me a message on TikTok, because we're currently live over here, or just give us a call at 0322825491 and 0322824746. I mean, for a very short period of time, I would say you have a lot of information to actually share with people when it comes to the SST. And looking at the website, it is very impressive. There are a lot of information there that you can actually understand more about the SST. So it's called My SST. That's myst.customs.gov.my. So with regards to this, how do these SST changes align with Malaysia's broader economic goals and fiscal policies?
As I said, government is making an effort to reduce deficits, right? So then one is to reduce expenditure. So programs that are considered not necessary have been cut down, have been scaled down. Prime Minister keeps saying cut down on overseas travel, on unnecessary expenses. We even have a circular that went out recently in the last week, says please you do your functions within your government premises, try and use local fruits. So this is year of ASEAN, so promote local fruits, promote local food as well. So government is making that effort to reduce expenditure. At the same time, we have to raise revenue to take care of the facilities, as I mentioned, to provide better services for the rakyat. So we need to raise revenue, at the same time cut down expenditure, so that towards this next 5 years, we will reach our fiscal deficit targets. When this government took over, debt was above 60% of GDP. So in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, Prime Minister has fixed it as nothing more than 60. Last night we were on a call with our Indonesian counterparts, Ministry of Finance. Their deficit is below 3%. They have a law. Their debt is below 60%. They have a law. They're at 45%. So the thing is, Malaysia has sort of spent a bit too much in plenty of these mega projects and so on. So now is the time for us to tighten our belts so that we leave the economy in a better footing for the future generations.
And now is the time.
It's always good to be prudent, right? Prudent financial spending is always encouraged. But because it has not been done for a very long time, so this is where you have a Prime Minister who says, now let's all work together and put the house in a better order.
Now, if you just tuned in, we're talking to Yang Berusaha Encik John Patrick. He's the Undersecretary of Tax Division, Head of Tax Division of the Ministry of Finance, talking about understanding the new SST landscape, what Malaysians need to know. Now, in a nutshell, of course, if you've just tuned in, we are talking about the SST and how it affects us. Now, we are trying to make sure that you understand that most essential goods here in Malaysia are not being taxed for the SST. And of courst, when it comes to our own facilities as well, there are certain things that you need to know. And in order for you to know more about it, you can log on to myst.customs.gov.my to know more about it. Now, we're going to go for another short break. And then when we come back, we'll talk more about this much more in depth. So stick around for that. In the meantime, here's Chappelle Roan. Good luck, babe, right here on Tracks. Chappelle Roan, Good Luck Babe, in the time to 43 minutes past 9. Good morning, Malaysia. Otto here, coming to you live from Angkasa, Puri, Kuala Lumpur. Also on our TikTok account at TRAXXfm Official. Thank you very much for joining us on the live as well. Now, we're talking to Yang Berusaha Encik John Patrick Anthony Sami from the Ministry of Finance. He's the head of tax division over there. And we're talking about understanding the new SST landscape, what Malaysians need to know. And it's funny that off air we were talking about how people might misconstrue certain information and might leave out certain things as well. So don't believe what's happening out there, because sometimes people make mistakes and actually give out wrong information, which is why you need to get it from the source. And this is also the reason why we have our guest here today to explain to us that there's actually a lot of things when it comes to fine print and comes to the Gazette. So I'm made to believe there are 5 orders when it comes to the Gazette order, and you can find it on the mysst.customs.gov.my website for further information. Now, when it comes to this, what is the funniest thing that you've heard so far, Mr. Patrick, when it comes to this, when the SST came into effect?
Thank you, Otto. The funniest comment I heard was that if somebody goes to Port Dickson and picks up a bucket of seawater, they'll be charged 5%.
For what reason?
For what reason? So then we had to scroll through to find out. Actually, they were referring to Chapter 25 in the Customs Gazette order. Chapter 25 is salt. So if it's the normal salt that you and I use for daily cooking, is at 0%. And then you have salt that is processed, that goes through a process. So as I said, manufacturing related goods will all land at 5%. So in this case, the salt water is used to provide some saline solutions that a doctor or pharmacist would use, right? So that because it's a processed product, so from seawater, then it becomes 5%. So I think the Malaysians are assured you can go to Port Dickson or any beach and take any water, and
you'll not be charged.
You will not be charged. Thank you.
So is there anything else that you'd like to add before I let you go, sir?
So basically, we just want to explain that the Gazette orders, the industry is familiar with it, the customs officers are familiar with it, So there's a lot of a lack of understanding, so that's creating plenty of confusion out there in the market. So please refer to the tax agents, refer to the experts who can then help you understand further.
Yep. So thank you very much to our guest here today, Yang Berusaha Encik John Patrick Anthony Sami from the Ministry of Finance. He's the head of tax division, and everybody else who's in the studio as well. Thank you very much for bringing a very good guest in the studio as well. So we were talking about understanding the new SST landscape, what Malaysians need to know. So once again, if you'd like to know more about the SST, head over to mysst.customs.gov.my for further information on that. All right. So thank you very much for coming to the studio, Mr. Patrick, and everybody else. We're going to go for a short break and lead to the news at 10. So thank you very much. And we'll be straight with Trax Midday Buzz with Anil. So stick around for that one. Leaving with Baby Monster, Sheesh, right here on Trax.